Well, welcome everybody to the Young Life Podcast, episode 11. So glad to have you guys with us. Look, here's the deal. We've tried to record this 3 times already, and my internet keeps blowing up. And so, we're feeling frosty. We're good. We're ready to roll. So glad to have you with us. My name's Scott. I'm Young Life Pastor here at Mapleview. And why don't you guys take a quick minute to introduce yourself? Go.
I'm Aiden. I'm a part-time Bible college student, streamer, and I host the TWL small group at 7:30 on Sunday nights, and it's a blast. You should totally come out.
Good
stuff.
Make
sure you join us 7:30 Sunday nights, face-to-face, Zoom to Zoom, and Ben and Aiden do an awesome job.
It's great.
Come on. My name's Jake. I go by Shake and Jake Stanley at Life 100.3. I'm on air, street team, and I'm a part-time Thursday and Fridays.
My name's Elliot. I host the Open Conference podcast every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And I am finally York U alumni. We're done. Out. Yeah. Zilch. We finished. Easy peasy. Done. Run it back. Let's keep going. Is this
everybody is like speed talking because we want to get it in before my internet blows up again. Stephen Parsons, come install Rogers in my house. That'd be great. This week we're talking about talk is cheap when the cost is high. And in our lives, we don't want to be people who just talk a big game. We want to be people who actually make a difference in the world around us. One of the things I think is a blessing coming out of COVID is it's had to make us ask the question, what does my faith look like when the natural routine is disrupted? When I'm stuck at home, when I can't go to the Young Life like I used to, my Sunday morning experience is different. Maybe the small group that I'm used to isn't meeting, whatever it might be. What does my faith mean to me, and how am I still going to pursue Jesus in a season where it doesn't look the same as it ever has? And, that's where talk is cheap when the cost is high kind of comes from. We want to be people who don't just talk a big game, but people whose lives are modeled after following Jesus, even when situations are not ideal, like we find ourselves in. We find ourselves in a stay-at-home order. For better or for worse, it's just where we find ourselves. We're not going to get into debating it. It's just where we find ourselves. And so one opportunity that we do have in this season is to literally love our neighbors, to be people who see the 5 houses, 2 houses on either side, 3 across the street, the people around us as our sphere of influence and how we can influence them. Do you guys know your neighbors? Do you know your neighbors? And when's the last time you talked to your neighbor? Go.
Yeah. My neighbor, he on the left, he does landscaping. He also does like this aerial photography. Sometimes he does paragliding. I think that's what it's called. When they have like the big fan on their back, like a strap kind of thing. Super cool. Cool. And then my neighbors on the right, they have this little dog. Really is a cute dog, but every time you go outside, it just barks and barks like crazy. But then you go over the fence and it's just like super afraid. So I don't know what's going on there.
What about you, Aiden?
Dang.
Oh, Aiden just moved, so he gets a mulligan, but he's gonna go back on his last house.
Okay, my last house. Yeah, I knew the neighbors. To the neighbors to my right, they this wasn't their only house. They in Russia and before COVID, so I haven't seen them in a very long time. Even if I did, it was just a little wave or whatever. And then my other neighbors, it's I don't really honestly, like I don't really have much interactions with them besides the odd like, hey, or like the odd how's it going?
Tip of that.
the head nod. Yeah. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How about you, Elliot?
So I live on the end of my street, so it's just on the right hand side is just a curb. So on the left hand side, I don't know my neighbors really that well, other than, as Aiden said, just a simple hello, how's it going? Hope your day's going well or whatever. My neighbors across, I have known them from time. So like the Laineses are family that I knew back in Toronto when I went to a Spanish church. So like they're basically family. So we hang out all the time. We go over, watch awesome. Raptors. So we're super chill.
Yeah, so McKenna lived in this house almost going on, I don't know, I guess 2.5 years now. We lived at this house. And we try to do our best to get to know our neighbors. Our neighbors a little bit on the left. He's a butcher. He's a great guy. Our neighbors on the right are this nice Ukrainian family. There's a little bit of a language barrier, but they're really sweet and nice. And they throw like these Euro dance parties, which you'd think would be really annoying, but Michaela and I think it's great. Sometimes we're on our deck eating dinner. It's like, and they're having a bomb. Like they're a great family. But I find it hard lately. I feel like things have changed. Like nowadays, people get home from work, they grab their stuff, and they just kind of go in the front door. That's what I find. Like, do you guys remember when you were a kid? It felt like everybody was hanging out on the street all the time, or at least like kids were getting out of their house. You were meeting tons of people. Like you knew people. Was that you guys? Were you guys ever the hang outside bike gang, road hockey kids? Like, did you know the people on your street growing up?
Yeah, for me it was a lot of street hockey, so it was a lot of moving the nets and then going to play. But that was
like
right, right. But now, our area where we live, they built a basketball court where it was just a plot of land that wasn't being used. So now they put a basketball court. So now like us, like young adults and teenagers are all rolling up and playing 5v5s and just, it's great. You want to catch some L's, guys? Come join us at the court.
Catch some L's, get out. Catch some L's. What about you other guys? What about Jake and Aiden?
Like I kind of hung out with kids around, but it was a lot of old people around my neighborhood growing up. But when I would hang out with neighbors, it would be like I had a playground in my backyard, so we'd gather around to my place and hang there. Beside,
I live in Thornton now. Lived here, I think it's like 12 years, but the prior 12 years of my life, I lived in Creemore. And in Creemore, if anybody's ever been to Creemore, there's not a bunch to do. But you can like bike around and like
brew beer.
Yeah. Go to the brewery, just on the main street. No, but we go like to the parks and stuff. And there's like the Mad River. You can walk in the river, go fishing or something. It was a good time.
Well, times may have changed, and what I think it requires from us is more intentionality. I think we have to be really, these relationships don't come by accident unless you've lived beside the same people your entire life. Like over time, then relationships may have formed. But if we want to be people who are involved and actively looking to care for people and love them and just show love on them, like we have to be intentional about that. It's not going to happen by accident. And, in the current situation we find ourselves in, what better opportunity we have than care for the people on our street? They're home, you're home, no one's doing anything. Can we encourage them? Can we let them know that we're there, that we want to be involved, we want to get to know them, even in such a simple way? Zechariah 4:10 says, "Don't doubt the day of small beginnings. God loves to see the work begin." And if I could have a life motto, I think that should be it. Just like, let's just start, even if there's small beginnings, to do good things. And today we have Pastor Laura Fess on the podcast to talk about how to be available in our lives to the people around us. She's a pastor leader right now. She's working in social work and therapy. And her life is really just a life that she's made available to the people around her. Anybody who knows Laura and talks about how she's like the living embodiment of enthusiasm. Like she is just like the most excited to see you, welcoming, available person. As far as when you're having a conversation with Laura, it's like she's dialed in, and that in and of itself is such a rare thing. And so she just has amazing insight on how we can care for our community and we can care for our neighbors. We're really excited to have her join us. But before we jump into that, we have our Young Life download. Why don't you check it out right now before we jump in with Pastor Laura Fess. Well, hey, everybody. Normally, I have my message recorded at the church on an actual camera and not on Zoom, which I'm recording myself on right now. But for whatever reason, we lost it. And so, this is round 2. But today is a simple challenge. Tonight, we want to talk about how the cost is high and we can't be people who talk a big game, but don't actually live out and activate our faith. And, one of the things I think has been awesome about COVID, for all the things that have been terrible, is that it's actually put us back in the position to be in the driver's seat of our faith. A lot of the routines of our faith have been broken. Maybe the schedule or the small group or the way that you used to serve, those things have all kind of been disrupted for better, for worse. And one of the benefits from that is that there's moments where we've had to ask ourselves the question, okay, well, what does my faith mean for me? Without the things that have become routine or schedule, how does my faith look? How is it lived out? How is it practiced? And how do I follow Jesus while still in this situation that I find myself in? And, this past year has really taught me that there are just some things that you cannot overcome. There are just certain things you need to endure. And maybe you're feeling that way, where it's just you have to endure and you got to stick with it and you got to see it through. And yet, how do we still be effective followers of Jesus? Not just because we are reading our Bible or praying, and those are incredible things, but people who are actually making a difference in the life of someone else, even while we're stuck in this situation. Here's what Zechariah 4:10 says: "Don't despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." And, I want to encourage you today that God wants to do something in and through your life, even here and now. And I know that can be a challenging thought when it feels like so many of the regular things of our life can be taken away and that we're not able to function how we normally do. And yet God is still wanting to do something if we are willing, if we're open, and if we are available. A personal challenge for myself this past few weeks and months is that no one's life was ever changed by someone who chose to make excuses rather than make a difference. And, we want to be people where our lives make a difference, not excuses. And for the last year, our circumstances have not been ideal. And yet, God doesn't ask us to just be effective in ideal circumstances, but to be willing and able to go beyond the circumstances we find ourselves in, to lean into his power, to trust him, and to be effective anyway, to reach out, to show love, goodness, kindness, graciousness to the world around us in whatever way we can in the season that we find ourselves in. Here's what James says at the end. And this is Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of the end of chapter 1 of James. It's called the Message Bible. It's a paraphrase of the real deal. And it's a great translation. This is what he says. Post this all, fudge. Post this at all the intersections, dear friends. Lead with your ears, follow up with your tongue, and let anger straggle along in the rear. God's righteousness does not grow from human anger. So throw all spoiled virtue and cancerous evil in the garbage. In simple humility, let the gardener, God, landscape you with the word, making what he calls a salvation garden of your life. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you are a listener when you're anything but, letting the word go in one ear and out the other. Act on what you hear. Those who hear and do not act are like those who glance in the mirror, walk away, and 2 minutes later have no idea who they are and what they look like. But whoever catches a glimpse of the revealed counsel of God, the free life, even out of the corner of his eye, and sticks with it, is not distracted or scatterbrained, but is a man or woman of action. That person will find delight and affirmation in the action. Verse 26, 27. Anyone who sets himself up as a religious by talking a good game is self-deceived. This kind of religion is hot air, and it's hot air only. Real religion, the kind that passes muster before God the Father. This is reach out to the homeless and the loveless in their plight and guard against corruption of a godless world. There's a few things that James tackles here right off the top. First of all, he says, and this is probably one of my personal vices, stop talking and listen. Stop talking. He goes, Eugene Peterson puts it this way: lead with your ears, follow with your tongue, and let anger straggle along behind, because God's righteousness doesn't grow from human anger. And, we've camped there before this year. We don't have to dwell on it, but first thing off the bat, stop talking. Stop talking. Learn to listen. Learn to not get worked up, not get riled up. And then he transitions like, hey, while we're talking about listening, when we hear the word of God, if it goes in one ear and out the other, and we never actually act on what we believe, he says it's like someone who sees themselves in a mirror, walks away, and forgets what they look like. And, I think there are moments when we see ourselves really clearly in the gospel. That's what the gospel does for our life. It holds a mirror up of who we are versus who Jesus is. And it reveals to us how good he is and how much we need him in our lives. And so when we walk away from that reflection and that moment of coming to understand the gospel and who Jesus is, and we do nothing with it, it's like we forgot that it even happened. And, we can't forget where we fit into the gospel. We can't forget where our lives fit into the gospel, that we have been people who have been saved or receivers of goodness, grace, love, mercy. And so our job is to now go and be an extension of that goodness, grace, and mercy in our lives, that people would come in contact with our life and they would understand the love of God because of who we are. It's this incredible challenge that James gives us. Verse 26 to 27, again, he says, anybody who sets themselves up as religious by talking a good game, they're self-deceived. He says that they're hot air Christians. They're hot air people, because real religion means that we actually go and we do something about it. And this is where I love that Zechariah 4:10 verse, because right now we're stuck at home and we're in a stay-at-home order, and we're really not supposed to be doing a whole lot of anything outside our house. And so God blesses the small beginnings. It doesn't need to be this grand Instagram famous, amazing moment where it's just this big thing to celebrate. It can be even just small, tiny gestures of choosing to go, make your life available, care, and love someone else. No one's life was ever changed by someone who chose to make excuses rather than make a difference. And so what do we do when we're stuck at home? Here's my simple challenge to you, that we would still be effective and on mission, want to be loving, kind, generous, and gracious to people around us. All of us have neighbors. And right now, our neighbors are really potentially our only sphere of influence. If you're working from home, I'm in my basement currently. If you're working from home, the people around your house are probably the only sphere of influence that you have at the moment. If you live in a condo building, there's people down the hallway. There's people on floors above you, below you, whatever it might be. Meet them in the lobby. If you live in a basement apartment, you have tenants or owners above you. We all have neighbors and people in our sphere of influence. And so here's my challenge. I want you to go to Tim Hortons, buy a 10-pack of Timbits, write a note, a card. Hey, I'm Scott. I live at blah, 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 blah. Just thinking about you. I'm your neighbor. Want to let you know if you need anything. This is me still writing the note. If you need anything, we're here for you. We're thinking about you guys. We just want to let you know that your neighbors are here. If you need anything at all, just make our lives available. Just a simple gesture. You drop off Timbits, you drop off a note, you give it to your neighbors, and you just try to be generous, kind, and loving. Don't doubt the day of small beginnings, because God rejoices to see the work begin. And when we choose to begin the good work, God is faithful to return and create opportunities in our life where we actually get to go and demonstrate goodness, kindness, love, patience, peace, goodness, gentleness, self-control, all the fruits that God's growing in us. We actually begin to demonstrate, but it requires us to be available and be the ones who are going to not doubt small beginnings, even small gestures, just taking the time to get to know the people on your street and in your life. It's just a simple thing. And so my challenge to you is, hey, let's not be self-deceived by being full of good talk and knowing exactly what the best thing to do. And let's not just be people who know it all. Let's be people who do it all. Let's be people who actually reach out and make a difference, even where we find ourselves today. Grab some Timbits, write a note, and just let someone know on your street that you care about them this week. We have Pastor Laura Fess. Well, she's not a pastor right now, but she's, in my mind, she'll always be just amazing pastoral heart and ministry. And she's joining us today to talk about how we can be believers who are effective in the middle of our current situation. So why don't you check it out right now, our interview with Laura Fess. Well, everybody, welcome Reverend in our hearts, Laura Fess, joining us today. Laura, what have you been up to lately?
Well, surviving COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and eating lots of good food. My husband is now smoking his own meat and making pasta from scratch. So I am literally living my best carb and meat-filled life thanks to COVID boredom. And I'm working in Barrie and loving life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Laura's not pastoring at the moment, but she's got a huge pastoral heart. And for years, she has invested and poured into many of the lives, probably your life at Mapleview. Whoever's watching today, she was probably your youth pastor at some point, or youth leader, or whatever it might be. And so big fans of the Fess family in Barrie here. But we want to talk to Laura because Laura has well, from what I know of Laura, Laura's been able to live her life in this way. They're just a very open door. Like when you're talking to Laura, you're pretty much the only person in front of her, or at least she makes it seem like that. I'll brag on her for a little bit, but just a really open life and inviting. She just brings people in. And, as we're in this COVID season where everybody's social distanced, to have the posture of having our life still open and inviting to people can be really, really challenging. Like something we really got to be intentional about. And so we wanted to ask you, Laura, over the last year, the routines of faith are no more, or for many of us, whether you're watching online or your small group's not meeting, whatever it might be. And in a good way, it's probably put us back in the driver's seat of, okay, if my faith's going to mean something, I got to do something about it.
Yeah.
And so for the last year, what have you been doing to help continue practicing following Jesus while the routine of faith has been disrupted?
It's funny because when I think back of my own personal experiences growing up, I got saved in my bedroom, not at a church, not at a altar call. And those are amazing times to get saved too, but my conversion was with my mom and dad in my bedroom. And when I was 6 or 7 years old, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit while sitting in the van with my aunt who prayed for me. There was nothing that happened, just my aunt praying for me. And then what I would call my secondary conversion when I was a teenager and had kind of had an identity crisis, that happened in my bedroom alone. No mom, no aunt, just me alone. And I guess what this season has highlighted or just reinforced that genuinely the most profound moments of my spiritual walk have happened outside of the routine or the structure of what we consider to be church, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I think that I was talking to my brother-in-law, Drew, this week, who's a great guy just to bounce things off of. And I was just running through what is church? What is it? It's whoa, can we start some deconstruction? You're going to ask, what is church? You're 34 years old and you don't even know, but just because we are grieving, right? We are lamenting because we cannot meet with each other, not the way that is tangible and tactile. And, the 13-year-old loves the greet someone with a holy kiss verse, but that's in our soul, we want to tactilely experience life with people. And Drew was just saying that church is a gathering. That's what it is. It's the gathering. Yeah. But just because the gathering is not happening doesn't mean that those personal experiences can't happen. Right.
Yeah, that they're not valid. That they're not significant. To say that, I there are thousands of believers around the world who aren't able to have, or millions of believers around the world that aren't able to have the same experience we do.
Totally.
And part of my challenge coming through this is, are we invalidating all the people who have to serve Jesus in a different way, just based on where they are?
Yes, we are. That is what we are doing. That is.
Well, it's just, we don't have to like it, but
totally.
You know what? There's grief, but then there's growing pains. You know what I mean? There's a part of it where it's, okay, well, if I'm now responsible to I hate the term feed yourself, but if I'm going to be responsible to actually put into practice my faith, there's going to be some significant growing pains, I think, that come through that.
Yeah.
And
I think you can be grieving the gathering. I'm grieving gatherings that are not liturgical church gatherings, just all gatherings.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
grieving
true.
I'm grieving my family. I'm grieving, actually having my neighbors over for dinner. I'm grieving those things. But I think about it this way when it's my own personal walk. So Mike and I lived far away for a few years from our friends and family, and we went into long distance relationship mode, right? We, for 2 years, were no longer able to gather. I was not able to tactilely, tangibly hold my mom, hold my friends. It went into literally virtual relationships.
You've been training for this. You guys have been training this for years. Perfect.
So the thing that's interesting though is just because I couldn't meet with my mom tangibly for 2 years, just because I couldn't meet with my friends that were still living here tangibly for 2 years, does not mean that the relationship ceased to exist.
Yeah.
If anything, it evolved and it became something honestly really profound, because you're right, those 2 years of long distance actually prepared us for COVID. So I'm like, I know how to have friends I can't see. I've been doing this for a while. But it's like that with our relationship with God. If the tangible tactile experience is what we're holding on to validate the relationship that we have with him, then COVID is a real stressor. Okay. Yeah. Now, I think COVID is a source of grief, 100%. Grief around the gathering, the church meeting tangibly. But I don't think COVID should be a stressor to our relationship. Right?
Well, and hopefully it puts us in the innovation mindset of, okay, well, I can't do it this way anymore. And maybe I used to serve on this team. Maybe that was my outlet for whatever it might be. You know what I mean? And there's a degree of it where if we're just consuming, then this is going to be a challenging season. But if our faith evolves into being a disciple, where we're actually activated in the mission of the church, which is not just meeting together, but actually making a difference in the world around us, you know, it might look different, but it doesn't mean that we can't still have a flourishing relationship with God because we chose to be active, rather than feel like we're waiting for an ideal circumstance. And I think that's been the challenge of myself, is like the circumstances are not always ideal. And at least for North American church, circumstances have been pretty good. Like, think about like for all the things that maybe we've been stressed out about or frustrated about or not the best, I think this is good perspective to go, no, things were pretty good. And if we weren't activated then we're definitely not going to be activated now. And Eugene Peterson's translation, I use him all the time, the Message, like a bad Christian, talks about being hot air Christians, and people who, you know, we don't actually do anything with our faith. Like we might know the latest Carrie Job song, but what does actually translate into changing the world around us? And the thought we've been circling around tonight is no one's life was changed by someone who chose to make an excuse to make a difference. And so how could people, even in the middle of a stay-at-home order, make a difference in their sphere of influence? You know, you're not, maybe not very wide, but you got people on your street. How can people demonstrate making a difference? Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's like, I think the pressure is to reinvent something, but it's like, no, let's uninvent it. Like,
oh, that's a good line. Tweet that, girl. Look at you go. Yeah, that's great.
Twitter. Maybe I'll get it. I used to. I bought followers once for the youth group. I'll admit it here, because I was like, we need followers, and I'm just gonna buy it. And then Ryan Quarrel found out. He's like, you bought them? I'm like, how else do you get them? And he's like, people all those follow you. I was like, oh. But they
all those bot accounts in China, they got saved. There's revival. You were just contributing to the Chinese church. Amen. I receive it. Nothing's wasted, Laura.
Yeah, no. So with my tweet, you know, I think about, I've used this kind of example to explain. I picture life in stories or images is how I learn. But I think that church prior to what I really believe is a reformation, and that may be too strong of a word, but I really believe that we are in the middle of something of God reforming what has been. And, you know, if you go to with the expectation that you are a consumer, well, you go in whatever outfit that you want to wear that day. You grab a cart, you pick whatever you want or need off the shelves. If there is a mess in aisle 4, you don't stop. Why would you stop? You keep going. Yeah. Maybe you're a saint and you stop, but you don't stop. Not if it's vomit, not if it's something disgusting. You keep going. And then you probably go to Food Basics, doesn't do this anymore. So yeah, at Walmart, they pack your bags, you know, and you watch them put your stuff in the bag and then you leave, right? Well, if you go to Walmart and you're not a consumer, you're actually going as the role of the employee. It's a very different experience, right? Mm-hmm. You probably put on the uniform before you got there. You're not changing in the hallway.
Totally.
You put on the uniform and your mindset, you don't grab a cart and then just start picking things you want, right? You're looking for, what is my role? What is my job here? And how can I serve? So if you walk by aisle 5, you see the mess and you clean it. If you don't, you're getting fired, and if someone has food that needs to go in a bag, you don't stand there like the consumer and watch it happen. You take action and you do it. And I think what's part of this beautiful reformation is that I think that a lot of us, myself included, have been going into the week or into church or into our relationship with God as the consumer mentality. And that means this is about me, what I need this week, what I want this week. I don't want to get messy and I'm just going to leave. Please pack my bag. Mm-hmm. Right? Whereas COVID has shut down all of those opportunities and has made us, especially as believers, go, oh, shoot, no one's going to tell me be here at 6 to serve on this team as part of this mandated, bring 5 people to church in 6 weeks. Can you do it? Or whatever the sticker is, right? And so for me in my life, I literally lived in this house with 2 kids and neighbors. And then I go to work twice a week. That's it. I don't even go to grocery stores anymore. I do delivery. If I put on the uniform of Christ, my realm of influence is very small, but that does not mean it's meaningless.
Totally.
Right? And so when you have that mindset on, everything is an opportunity. Right? Everything is a chance. So even sitting out on my deck, I heard, we had neighbors move in. It was right before Easter. They just moved in. I heard a kid. Well, I'm like, I put together Ellis's leftover chocolate because but it's okay. They will never know. Put it in a little bag and went over. And he's like, you're a kid and here's chocolate because I don't need it because I'll eat it. And if you have it, it's better. And I'm sure it's terrifying experience for them, but
that's perfect. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's something where it's like, oh, there's a person. Oh, there's someone here. Oh, there's, in the winter, there's shoveling that can happen. There's salts that can be sprayed. Do you need something? Our, neighbors were COVID lockdown for 2 weeks. You want us to pick things up? We can pick things up.
Yeah.
My life is about this big, but that does not mean it's meaningless. If I have the consumer mentality on, then I will watch every opportunity go by because I'm not even looking for it. Because I think it's about what I get off the shelf, right? But if you put on the uniform of, Christ, you will start seeing things and hearing things. And and then you just get to live a life filled with meaning that's small. Could it be that a small life is a meaningful one? Totally.
Like my life, this is the most Christian thing to say. My life verse would be like, don't doubt the day of small beginnings.
Yeah.
Because God rejoices to see it begin. And it's got to be our mentality. And I think this could be a whole side tangent. I won't go there. But I think the Instagram social media platform of, if it's not big, it's not explosive, it's not cool, it's not interesting, it's irrelevant, I think does to our detriment. And so because of that, we're really comfortable having a voice. We're not comfortable having a role. You know what I mean? Like we have found a lot to say. We have not found a lot to do.
Tweet.
That's yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I'll buy some followers. But I think that's the challenge is and I've been talking with a few friends of mine about this, like in how we disciple people and how we lead people to faith. Like, are we propping them up to have a voice and no role? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, here's all the right things to say, and we're okay with that. But no. Here's how it actually is activated in our life and how it's activated. Not even just in our local church, but in our community. How do we actually step into our community in a significant way? Yeah. And so what would you say to the person who's feeling insecure about what they have to offer? Laura, you are very outgoing. It seems like you know a lot of things. I don't have any of those things. What do I have to offer? And if I got myself the situation where, I actually got to pour into someone's life and I feel like I don't have anything to really give, what would you say to that person?
Well, I would say that I'm honestly not very confident. I'm more bizarre, kind of scary, a little awkward, very weird. Okay. So, and it's making a massive assumption that anyone is being impacted by my life outside of I could be the neighbor that people are like, oh my gosh, she's outside, run. But I would say that, obviously with work and everything, I believe in insecurity and I know about insecurity, and insecurity can destroy your life. But I don't follow a self-help mantra about my security. Okay. I would say that I'm insecure 24/7. Okay. That's like naturally who I am. Because self-help mantras about becoming secure, I mean, they're just fake it till you make it, just try to convince yourself mantras, right? And so for me, any evolution of what maybe seems like confidence is born out of just being God secure. Like to just really know I will never be enough. I'll never be good enough. I'll never be talented enough. I'll never be funny enough. I'll probably always be bizarre and awkward, but God made me this way. And so when that human part flares up, which happens every day, because I'm 100% human still. Isn't it crazy? Yeah, I've been saved forever and I'm still 100% human. I'm like, oh. But that if you allow God to be the one that tells you who you are, and you allow him to be the one that says, I gave you this. And like, God didn't really necessarily give me skills. I mean, I have skills, but the way that I impact the world around me isn't like, oh, I like to read books. Like, like, you know what I mean? It's not like he gave me skills. He gave me his spirit.
Totally.
Like that is what could transform anything. And so when I'm feeling insecure, it lets me know, well, I'm thinking that I have something to offer this person. I have nothing to offer them, but I have the Holy Spirit, which isn't me, it's him, and so he's going to guide me. He's going to say it. He's going to, edit me. And
and making ourselves available. Like we were joking with the guys earlier that it feels like people today, and it's of no fault of their own. People get home, they grab their stuff, they go inside and they shut their door.
Yeah,
like I remember as a kid.
There's nothing to do at home.
I knew my neighbors. I feel like the community that maybe it was I just lived on a good street, but I feel like I knew the people around me. And maybe that's changed. Maybe that's like a faux Canadian politeness or something like that. But what I've found, especially right now, is people just need someone who's going to encourage them, not in a cheesy way, not in a weird way, but if you're the voice in someone's life, that's just, hey, you're doing better than you think you are. Like stop beating yourself up. You're doing great. Don't sweat it. Like anybody can do that. And not everything needs to be a
skill
or like conversion mindset. Like it can just be I want my life to emulate who I think Jesus would be right now. And if that might just be something encouraging, it might just be something life-giving to say, hey, you're doing amazing. Thinking of you guys dropping off a bag of chocolate. Like there's probably more lives changed through simple small gestures. And I think there's parts of it we got to create space for God to show up and do something in not just their life but our life. And when we choose to make ourselves available, it's just, that's all it really takes, I think.
I think the conversion mindset is actually really arrogant. And I had it for years where I really thought that I was going to be the one that like.
And it's disingenuous. It's like my kindness comes with a price tag. Like this relationship feels like it comes with a price tag.
Totally. And it's like, as if I can do that. As if I can convert someone. I have done this long enough to know that no one converted me. I had a powerful interaction with the Holy Spirit when I was a little kid. And again, when I was a teenager, no one did it. People came alongside me for sure. But I have no agenda to convert anyone because I just think it's so arrogant to think that I could.
I have moments when I can't even win myself to Jesus. So to think that I'm like necessarily killing it for everybody else, but I really think this part of it is just like, it doesn't have to be this grandeur, but just start. You know, just like start to be someone who is available. Like I that seems so trite, and yet I think it's the most important thing. Like you're saying in your like with the people around you, like whether it's your neighborhood or the people you work with, just even being the person who's willing to go out of their way to speak life and encouragement and truth and openness and availability. I just think that's when God shows up and does his best stuff.
You want a quick trick that may help people open that door?
Yeah, totally.
So it's the number one way that you can tell if someone is interested in getting to know you. Okay. Number one way is that when they ask you a question, that you ask them the same question back. Okay. So for example, if I'm meeting someone and I say to them, "Oh, hey, how's your day going?" And they say, "Good."
Yeah.
They're not interested in getting to know me. Okay. But if my neighbor says, "Hey, how's your day going?" I have it in me. I'm just going to repeat the question back. It's going good. How's yours? And sometimes you can get a little tongue-tied just because, you know, social stuff is hard. It can be, especially when we haven't seen humans forever. But yeah, if you're like, how do I show people that I'm interested in? Just mirror whatever they've asked you and genuinely care about their answer. And it's a quick trick and it shows. So now when you ask someone a question, they don't ask it back. You're going to be like, "Oh, you're all about yourself."
Scandalized. Absolutely scandalized. That's awesome. Laura, if you could speak to your younger self, and you're not old, but if you could speak to your just got out of school, starting your career, starting your life self, what would you say to yourself?
Oh, well, I would say ambition is dangerous. Don't trust it. I would say, I would say, because I think in my 20s, I wanted to build something amazing. And it was actually just really quite arrogant. And it doesn't mean that God couldn't do something through it. It doesn't mean God couldn't use my life. But that ambition can make you cross boundaries with yourself. It can make you give up margin. It can make your relationships really unhealthy. For me, it was ambition. Okay. I think capitalism supports ambition. So I think it's like really reinforced, especially in your 20s, because a lot of people in their 20s are feeling the angst of, I finished school. I got to like do this, do that, do this, do that. And it's like, honestly, none of it matters. None of it matters. I mean, it does, but it really doesn't, you know? I would say figure out so along with that, what I've done to try to change that is instead of being ambition and goal driven, I've had to change and be about values. So my life is not about attaining goals. My life is about every day, any decision I make, any interaction I have, having that line up with values that I have. Mm-hmm. And so for me now in my 30s, my values are to be present, right? To be present with my kids, to be present with my family, to be available, right? Where to never be in a place where I could be interrupted. That's a value I have. That one's hard. Because you do feel, especially with children, I feel interrupted 24/7, but to be so present that there's no such thing as an interruption, and to be a neighbor. And then Sabbath. Those are the life values that I've learned from my 20s. Because if it's all about goals, you just run and you may get them, but you've killed something or someone's in the process. But if it's about the values that you have, those values are what I want out of my deathbed to say, you know, I don't care what I achieved. I don't care what I made. I don't care what I have to show for it. But I lived my life with these values. And that is fundamentally who I am. And hopefully that lines up with who God wanted me to be, right? Or had designed me to be. So I would say, that's what I would say to my 20-year-old self. I made so many mistakes and I probably still am. I'm excited I hear 40s are even better. And then your 50s are even more amazing. And then your 60s, I'm like, man, if you get more free from all this stuff every year, bring on the wrinkles and the sagging and all of it. I'm down.
Totally. And I think there's a part of this season of life is it feels like there's a lot of pressure for answers. And I'm just letting you don't get those very easily.
No,
like
there's no answers.
There's no answers. There are no answers. And it's not necessarily Like, I don't know. Once you arrive somewhere, there's always another flag post. Like there's always the next thing. So I don't know.
That's why goals are great. And I understand why they're reinforced culturally, because we need people to be capital hungry for capitalism to work. That's sociology. We can get in on it. But values are what your faith can line up with. And it's how you can make decisions moment by moment that aren't about a hustle, but are about presence.
Yeah. If you have goals with no values, you're in for a rough spot. And so I think there's a part, and this might be a good season for that. Like, have you ever thought in your brain, like there's a lot of people who feel like their life's been put on pause, and there's a lot of people who their life has kind of been put on pause, the life they had planned. And that's a realigning season. Realign with good value, good community, good people, and then reshape whatever your goals are going to be from that place.
Totally. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of people who will not go back to life the way it used to be.
No,
that's probably a good
thing. Let me put it this way. I never, ever want to go back to who I was before COVID, because God has rattled it, shooken it, reinforced things, revealed how unhealthy that lifestyle was. And this feels like a sabbatical, a Sabbath-atical, where it's just like, okay, what is a pace that glorifies you after this is open, after we go up from this? So,
well, Laura, we'll let you get back to that pace. Thank you so much for joining us, and always have so much wisdom and being available. Look, the values are all lining. We really appreciate it.
I did text you last night because I hadn't washed my face or showered for 2 days, and my kids weren't sleeping, and I said I can't do it tonight, so I was not meeting my value last night.
No one. It's fine. No one's perfect.
I know, but every time open, I confess.
Laura is my neighbor. I'll come over with a bag of chocolate. You can eat all of it. It'll just be great. It'll be amazing.
I'm done.
Well, thank you, Laura. I appreciate it so much. And for everybody else, back to the cast. Well, huge thank you to Laura for joining us. Always an honor to have you with us. We haven't had Laura back with Young Life Family. They came to my first ever Young Life conference, and they were amazing then, and they're still amazing now. And actually, they're my neighbor. They live down the street from where I live. And even as Michaela was pregnant and getting ready to have this baby, there are people who just loved on us. And so they were the first. She was the first person that came to my mind when I was trying to think of someone who goes out of their way to love their neighbor. And so our last question as we leave tonight, and I know we got a lot to think about from just the amazing stuff that Laura shared, but when's the last time that you've blessed someone just to bless them? And what could you do for your neighbors in the next week? That's the question I want to ask as we leave. When's the last time you guys just blessed someone to bless them?
Can't remember exactly, but recently I went to lunch with a buddy, and we were just in line, and I had ordered my food, and then he was still like getting his food ready and stuff, like they were making it, whatever. And then I just like grabbed it for him, just paid for it. And I don't know. I think it was something simple.
Don't doubt that they have small beginnings there, Jake. It's awesome.
Thank you.
What about you guys?
I shoveled the driveway last winter. That's
last winter. Oh, just like a few months ago.
A year ago. 1 year ago, I shoveled.
About a year ago, I shoveled the driveway.
Yeah, about a year ago, I shoveled this guy's driveway. No,
my back still hurts.
Myself.
My back. What about you, Elliot?
Yeah, no, I think this. I was thinking the same thing that Jake was talking about, where like me and my friends, also my brothers, probably we owe like amongst like ourselves, we probably owe ourselves like thousands of dollars worth of money, just based on like if somebody just needs food and they don't got money right now, being like, I got you. Yeah. And then it's just passing around. So just showing those little acts of kindness just each time, and like not holding grudges, being like, you owe me this, you owe me that. No, it's just blessing people for the sake of blessing.
Yeah. I think it's being willing to jump into when an opportunity presents itself. Like you guys are saying, like every kind of moment, it's like, look, someone else could do this, but I could do this. And I think that's what it means to not just be all talk, being people who are like, what's it going to cost me? Like, I want to be the person who wants to jump in, not the person who's going to leave it for the next person. Whether that's like, I don't know, like whatever it might be. Sometimes they're big things. Sometimes they're like these tiny little things. The other day I was heading to the church, and someone ahead of me, who I don't know who it was, paid for my breakfast that morning in the drive-thru. And so when I got to the window, I was like, oh, I'm going to pay for the person behind me. And so I paid. I was like, oh, like I'll just pay for the person behind me, and pulled up my debit card, and their order was like $43 at Tim Hortons. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. I tapped it. I was like, I lost the lottery on this one, but it's fine. And I think there's a posture of our life that we have to prepare to be generous in moments where we want to step in and do something, right?
Yeah.
Like to have an open hand to say, look, like what is this? It's just like, I'm not saying go broke, but it's just money. Like at the end of the day, like what does it really cost me? And you know what I got out of it? I got out of the fact of being like, hey, that like how much greater blessing is that for them? They're like, whoa, I kind of ordered a lot of food. That person still paid for it.
Yeah,
whatever
thank you
it
for
might
buying
be.
my Tim Scott. Thank you. That was me.
The Tim's for your whole family, I hope.
Yeah.
But like, I think there's something in our life to plan to be generous and to anticipate sacrifice and say, yeah, I want to do that. And there's a mindset that we can have where we say, I want to be intentional about being a person of sacrifice. And so my challenge to everybody this week is simply this. Mikhail and I are going to do it. I mentioned in my Young Life download, we're going to go to Tim Hortons, get a 10-pack of Timbits. It really costs you next to nothing. We're going to write a handwritten note. Hey, we're Scott and Michaela. I live at 88 Girdwood Drive. Everyone wants to come hang out. Oh, maybe not right now, but regularly.
Scott's
just want to let you know. Yeah, exactly. Wanted to let you know that we're thinking of you, praying for you. And here's our cell phone number, which I will not be giving out at the moment. And just drop it off. Just a small gesture. You know, like I think half the battle is just being willing to open doors in our life and allow God to create an opportunity to like go and serve and love and show our lives to people. You know what I mean? Like, but if we never open the door and we never throw out an invitation, you know, we can't be surprised when opportunities don't come our way. And so we be people who are postured to make the sacrifice and postured to try and make the difference. And I trust that as we do, you know, this lockdown season doesn't have to be terrible. It could be maybe something that God uses to grow a community around you, you know, the people who live nearby. And maybe for the first time, you get to know them on a next level and you get to be involved in their life in a new way. Well, so glad that you join us tonight. Go grab a pack of Timbits, write a note, say hi to your neighbor, whatever it might be. Next winter, shovel their driveway. Aiden always does one big shovel a year. That's his thing. That seems to work out well for him. But we're so glad you join us this week at the Young Life Podcast. And we'll see you next Monday night at 7:30. Bye for now.